All right, so good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, wherever you are. It's currently my time zone is 12 p.m. in the afternoon, so I'll say good afternoon from here. Uh, okay, my name's Hamid Abdulaziz. Today section we'll be talking about this particular topic about the building Dataverse cloud flows efficiently, and it's going to be very handy. And today, uh, I'm sure you're going to learn a lot from my guest speaker today. And then before I go to that, like I said earlier, my name is Hamid Abdulaziz. I'm an MVP business application. I'm also a senior consultant that I'm 365, working with Avanade, and currently it's been a wonderful experience so far. you know, living here in Ireland as well. Okay, today we have a wonderful uh, speaker today, and he's highly experienced, and also he's uh, a person that's which we can learn from, can tap a lot from him as well. And then he has been a very good, wonderful friend as well, right? So I would like to. His name is Lynn, and he's also MVP business applications, and then so he's a senior developer as well in the field of Power Platform here. So I'd like him to introduce himself. Thanks, Lynn, for joining. I really appreciate for coming and to share your experience as well on this. Right? Really
Yeah,
happy.
thanks for having me on the show. I'm really glad to have the opportunity to have a present in your MB Corner show. The topic that I'm going to present today is about the building Dataverse cloud flows more efficiently. So, as I'm coming from the Dynamics 365 CE background, I am more familiarized with the Dataverse side of the cloud floors other than the other connectors. So most of my day-to-day jobs are building cloud flows related to the Dataverse connector. And most of the time, whenever my teammates and colleagues and also those juniors coming up on board with the team, I just show them how to build the flows efficiently because if you don't know which you're when you're especially when you're new in the platform and you tend to make some rookie mistakes when you to retrieve all the data and process within the flows where you can build more efficiently to process the data. So that is what my topic is about. And as Hamid mentions, my name is Lynn. I'm currently working as a Dynamics 365 specialist in the Brisbane in the Australia. So I'm also a business application MVP. And yeah, that's my all about me and my topic. So yeah, shall we let's move on to the
Yeah,
slides, the
yeah. Thank
presentation.
you. Yeah. So thank you. Yeah, thank you. All right.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm currently working as a Dynamics 365 specialist in the Brisbane City Council. And today agenda we have three main topics. So the first one is how to optimize the Dataverse actions. And and along the way you will have a lot of tools, especially the community tools in the exam toolbox tools, and that will improve your productivity when you build the Dataverse cloud flows. So I'll explain those tools alongside with the optimization of Dataverse and how and when we can use and which tools we can use. And I'll conclude the session with the last topic is about what are the platform limits when it comes to building the flows and how to overcome that, and what are the things that we need to look out for. So for each section I will just conclude all the key points that I have discussed in the last 10-15 minutes, and at that time I'll have a break to take all the questions. So if you have any questions for the whole part of the sections, you can ask at that time. So you just drop in the chat, in the message, and Hamid will uh, coordinate during that time. So the first thing is about the trigger. Before we get into the actions, we'll start with the trigger. So when we have the Dataverse trigger, always important to have the when specify when we want to trigger the flow. So for example, this is this one. If you want to, if you just specify a trigger like this particular flow will be triggered every time the account is being updated, no matter if you update it in the status or name of the account or even the phone number. So one of the ways to to the filter the criteria is to set the trigger conditions that is native to the the cloud flows. So you have this trigger condition in any of the trigger, regardless of whether it's a Dataverse or SharePoint. So you can set, in this particular case, it will be trigger when the status is changed to verify. But for Dataverse Cloud Flows, it's even better. You can have, instead of having this trigger condition, you can have it at the select columns and the filter rows. So what that means is this particular trigger will only be triggered when the state code or status code column is changed. And the filter rules parameter specify that the status codes it will be only triggered when the status code is verified. In that way, you can have a lot of unnecessary flows being triggered, and also to avoid the recursive filter trigger when you have the update steps to the same account in the downstream in the cloud flow that will trigger the same flow again and again. So you can avoid those by specifying all these filter rows. And there are a few things to watch out for when you use this filter rows. In the select columns, make sure there's no space between each column name. So normally in the English, people know, like in the English language, we write after comma, there's always a space. But if you have like a space like this, your flow will just stuck there without being triggering. So always to make sure in the select columns parameter, no space between the each column. And the filter rows, you can only filter within the same table. So for example, this one, I can filter all the column values within the accounts table. And you cannot filter based on the related table. So let's say, oh, I want to trigger for the accounts where primary contact has a specific account role. So you cannot have a related table filter based on the filter role parameter. So that's one thing we cannot do. For this kind of scenarios, we need to use the condition step in the within the flow, and maybe we can cancel it if the flow run is not relevant. So here we have this state code, status codes, all these logical names. We need to use the logical name of the Dataverse column. And if we are not sure if we want to easily get the Dataverse column, what we can use is the one of the most used browser extensions for Dynamics 365 for Power Apps that is called Level Up tool. For this tool, you can click on the Level Up and logical name, then that will change and show you the logical name of all the fields within the form, so you can easily get the logical name of the fields without going to the Solution Explorer to get the name. So another option that is I frequently use is the show options and values. So that what it shows is show you the name of the integer values for each option set or choice. And in that way you can get, if you want to compare I want to trigger flows that are the status is verified, and then you can get the specific option set values easily within the on the browser using this extension. Another one is the open record in web API. So this option open this particular records that you open on the form in the web API. What is helpful is if you have any fields, any values and columns that are not visible on the form, only have those as a system hidden fields. You can show it as a uh, in the JSON value. So in that way, you can, with doing your troubleshooting, you can run the open record in web API to see if the values are being updated or not. So that's a really handy tool um, for Dynamics 365 and perhaps more driven app developers. So the first things that we want to do, whenever you have a list rules action in a Dataverse, you need to specify the first parameter is select columns. So that means you will only retrieve those particular columns from this list rows. And in that case, if you don't want to specify the select columns, what it does is it will show you the list of all the columns in this coming from this particular list rules action. As you can see on the right hand side, when you want to use the next action, you will have a list of all the values, all the columns in the previous steps, so that you have to scroll down and or even search to find the column that you want. So that is one disadvantage of using in the designer. And also, if by retrieving all the columns, it means it's impacting the performance. If you're retrieving one or two records, it's not really noticeable. But imagine if you're retrieving 500 or thousands of records and select all the columns, and that will definitely slower than retrieving the columns with a specific select columns. In this example, I'm only retrieving team ID, name, and administrator. So three columns, right? So so one thing to take note is for a lookup, we need to retrieve with specify the underscore logical name of the lookup underscore value. That is how we try to retrieve the name of the lookup column. But at the same time, we also need the administrator ID so that it will show up in the list of the flow designer. So here we can see I only select the three columns, and in the next step, compose, it will only show the three columns, which is also cleaner and easy to select from the flow designer. So that's one of the advantage of the using the list rows by selecting the columns. And another things is whenever we have to use and retrieve the the text string value of the option sets or a formatted date of the particular datetime columns or even the lookup, right? We don't have to go and retrieve and get another call to get the text value. What we can use is we can use the formatted value. So that one is a bit tricky. What we have to use is to append this particular text. So we have to add the expression. So here is a status code, and then we have to add the add odata.community.display.v1.formatted value. So I have mentioned about that in this my blog post. So what I'll do is at the end of session, I'll share my slides with Hamid, and then he will share it with all the attendees, and you can download, go through each slide, and in each slide there's a relevant blog post to get more details on how to get this information. So By using that formatted value, what you can get is here you can get the text value of the two options, the Boolean fields, or also the option set, the status, also the lookup values. So it's really convenient to get a formatted value instead of the retrieving for another one. But in case if you want a value from the related table, right? But it is not the text value. So in this case, I want to retrieve the accounts and the email address of the primary contact. So instead of listing the accounts and getting the related primary contact values in the next step, you can use the expand query to retrieve the data. So in that way, you just minimize the number of steps and retrieve all the data within the same single list rules action. And using those expand queries, it can be seems a little bit uh, like you might not know like how do I write the expand query? Is the syntax mean a bit complex? In that case, you need to use the exam fetch example builder. Is one of the most popular tools in the exam toolbox tool, and you build the query that you want. So in this query, I want to get the account, and then I had all these conditions and the related contact and all this information. After that, you can convert Power Automate parameters in the menu, and it will open up this dialog on the left bottom side. And then you can copy that filter and expand and use it in your Power Automate cloud flows, which is really convenient. So you don't have to worry about like writing it and worrying about the incorrect syntax or anything. So all once you're done, you can just copy into respective parameters of the list rows action. So that's really good too. I use it every day. And if you want to have more and more related, right, I just want to get a primary contact and the and other primary contact has a lookup related to another table, and I also want to get the value from that table as well. So you can use the nested expand. So it's more mentioned in the blog post mentioned in this link below, but you can have a nested expand for up to like 11 level. Is the Dataverse limitation, and then you can get the information. And all you have to do is once you get the data, you can have uh, write an expression with each lookup slash another lookup slash and until you get to the column that you want. So this is the one sample of the getting the data from the nested expand. Here you can see I have used 6 levels of the nested expand to get the related table, and all within one just this rules action. And yeah, same thing. You can use the exam toolbox to link entity to you can join multiple tables and you can get the attribute that you want, and then you can have the expand query where you can use it for your list rows action. And well, one of the things that I noticed some people do is instead of retrieving all the records and looping through in the conditions. So for example, here you retrieve all the accounts and then loop through all the accounts and check, oh, okay, if it is status is equal to active or zero, do something, right? So imagine if you have 1,000 accounts, your flow will retrieve 1,000 accounts and loop through 1,000 rows and then do the processing. Instead of that, what you can do is you can have a filter row, and by doing that, let's say if only of the 800 out of the 1000 records, only 800 are records are active, then you will only retrieve the necessary data, and then you can process the records instead of retrieving all the data and processing within the flow. So that's one easy way and optimize tips for the cloud flows. So here are the things that we've discussed. Always use the filter in the trigger, filter the columns, filter what values that you want to trigger. In the list rules, you need to specify the select columns. Okay, so whatever columns that you want to retrieve, you just make sure you specify it. And if you want to have any text value of a lookup or a twice, use a formatted value in the expression. If you have to get the value from the related tables, don't call another call. You can use the expand query to get the data from the related table, and you can do the nested expand to get the table from the 1 or 2 or 3 level up. Doesn't matter. So all the tools that we've mentioned just now are level up for Dynamics 365 and Power Apps. That's the browser extension that you can install on your browser, Chrome or Chromium Edge, and Exam Toolbox tool, which is the Fetch XML Builder. Okay, so is there any question until now?
No question this moment.
Mhm.
No question yet. Yeah.
Okay, okay, that's great. Okay, so we'll move on to another section. So after we talk about retrieving the data and the trigger, we're just talking about the one update and add a role. And this is one of the most frequent visitors, like the most visited blog post in my blog is how to set a lookup. It's not like setting a text value or integer value. Whenever people they directly set the GUID to the lookup column, and as you can see on the left hand side, there's a resource not found for a segment. The people get all these errors all the time, especially those who are new to the cloud flows with the Dataverse. There are multiple formats you can use. You can use the entity set name and like slash. For me, my favorite way is setting the entity set name, open brackets, GUID, and close brackets. That's how I set my lookup. So if entity set name is a bit different from the entity logical name, it's quite similar for most of the table names. So if it is contact, if it is context, right? It's more plural, simple, like accounts. But when it comes to some table names, like a bit more complex, like if it's a child table, the entity name is not children, right? So if for those tables that you're not sure, you can go to the make.powerapps.com, open to the table, and then you can check the tools and get the copy entity set name. So that's where you get the entity set name to use in the cloud flows. There are other tools like Level Up Extension. You can get the entity metadata that will show you the list of all the tables within your whole Dataverse, and where you can search and filter in the search box to get the entity set name. That's another way to get the entity set name to set the lookup. Um, and setting the lookup, you can sometimes you need to set the lookup dynamically, right? So in this particular scenario, what we want to do is when the parent account status is verified, and then we would update the primary contact of the child accounts with the same primary contact as the parent account. So sometimes what we do is, if there is the child account has the the primary contact of the parent account has a value, you will have to update the child account, but primary contact of the parent account doesn't have to contain the data, and we just want to leave as it is. So now, if it is a normal value, we just populate that dynamic value, and it will just work, right? If it is a value, it will set the value. If it is a null, it just set the null value. The problem with setting the lookup is we have this entity set name and all these brackets. So when we have a value, it will set the value with a GUID. And when there's a null value, we only have the entity set name and all these brackets, which is a wrong syntax for the Cloudflow, and the Cloudflow got an error. And so in that case, we just want to do is we have to write an expression to see if it is a value. And this is the syntax, the one of the samples. So I mentioned in the blog post and link below as well. And to explain this particular expression is, if it is the primary contact is empty, okay, we will set the value with if it is a null of the child record is also null, we just set it null. Otherwise, we will set the same value of the child record's primary contact value with the same value. Otherwise, we will set the primary contact value from the main parent records. So we will have to use a bit of a if condition and the concatenating the entity set name and the GUID to set the lookups dynamics values dynamically. Otherwise, what we have to do is we'll have to set it, check whether there's a value is contains data with the condition step, and have a two-step to set the value without setting a value. So we'll have a two-step. So we can combine it into the one step by using this kind of expression. And another advice that I want to give is always use cache data and process within the flow. On the left example, what I do is, let's say if you have to create the code lines from the opportunity and you want to retrieve, let's say I want to create the code lines for each opportunity line whenever the opportunity is successful. And then instead of retrieving on each line and creating, you can retrieve all the opportunity lines in the beginning of the flow and process and create in the flow. So as same as if we have a, let's say, the country, right? You want to set the country code based on the country that the user selected, and the user select 3 or 4 countries in multiple records. You don't want to go and retrieve the country code for each record. What you can do is you can collect all the countries and retrieve in a single query, and then in the process in the cloud flows you can use the filter to set the country codes from the data that you retrieve. So instead of go and retrieve the data from Dataverse multiple times, try to cache the data as much as you can and use the filter to filter and then from that data set and set the values. So that is the one of the ways to optimize your flows. So when you troubleshoot the flows, sometimes that's one of the tools to, not tools but out of the box functionalities. You can see, oh, I have 3 flows which have failed, but I just want to find one particular record for that particular flow run. And from this view, you can't see, and you can click on the edit columns, and you can add the GUID or the name, whichever it is unique and easily identify for the records. And you can have these columns in your flow run history. So in that way, you can narrow down and filter and find a particular flow run that you want to troubleshoot. So that is one of the tools that's you is easy for troubleshooting the flows. But if you have like thousands and thousands of flows and your flow run history is not easy to load, and then there's a flow execution history tools in XIM Toolbox that will list down all the flow runs for particular flows that you selected. So it can load up to 30 days, all the flow run history that's retained in the platform. And you can specify, I want to find the flows created by particular user, the GUID, or particular date, maybe which is like 28 days ago, which is not really easy in the out of the box flow run history because you need to load and load multiple pages. But by using the tool, it's a lot easier to find and uh, filter all these Cloudflow runs. Another tool is the Flows Visual Builder. The names suggest it's a tool to uh, document the cloud flows by building the visual diagram for each selected flow. But what it also does is it also has the ability to find and look for the flow run history as well. So these are the two new tools that you can use to find a particular flow run history. And all these days, Microsoft promoting like Copilot everywhere. So you can also, if you're new to the platform, you can start building the tool, Cloud Flows using Copilot. It may or may not work. Currently, it's like crawl stage, right? Always Microsoft says so. It's like a baby steps. They start like with a crawl and then walk and then run, right? We're currently in the crawl stage. So when I try like 80-90% times, it doesn't work. It doesn't produce what I wanted to. But give it a try. Every 2-3 weeks, you just start using the tool like again. You will notice that it's getting a lot better and better each time you try. So that's what I do is like give it a chance for to use the tool and come and revisit every now and then to see what are the new capabilities. So one of the new capabilities coming to the Cloudflare is the Copilot to troubleshoot your flows, and it will help you fix the issues if there's any problem with your Cloudflare. So it's really exciting news coming. So if you haven't, you go and watch those recordings in the Microsoft Build conference, which I recently released. So the key points that I mentioned in this section, how you can set the lookup values and how you can set it dynamically using the expressions, and guess the data whenever it's possible and try to process the Cloudflow's data dynamically. And the tools mentioned here, to get the entity set name, we can use the Solution Explorer out of the box or level up to for flow run history. We can either use the out of the box tools to add the new columns, or you have tools like flow execution history or flow visual builder. And last but not least, the copilots in the Cloudflows. Okay, before we move on to the platform limitations and uh, the Cloudflow's restrictions, is there any questions so far for this particular section?
No questions so far.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. So okay, let's move on. So Power Platform request limits for user versus service, right? So whenever we build, we own the flow, and sometimes we just for the flows that are being triggered for a particular trigger, like automated flows or for scheduled flows, we would like to run as application users instead of the flows owned by the users. That is important because one, we don't want to show like our name, like the record is created by like Lynn. So that's like in that way the users might think that, oh, Lynn created this record. No, instead of that, it would be better this particular record was created by a service account, and people would know, okay, this is record is being created by the backend service, the application user, right? And also that's one of the reason. Another reason is the license users have the uh, specific limits. So license user have within 24 hours, the paid license user have the Power Platform request limits for 40,000. So that means like if one user like system administrator or developer own all the flows and there's a really big system and all those flows are running like 100,000. So each request limit is each one step within the flow, right? If your flow has one compose, one if condition, one list rules, and loop through 5 records, then there will be 8 requests. So imagine we have a lot of flows running in the day, and it can easily exceed the 40,000 limits. So for a non-licensed user, and so non-licensed user is all the application users. Uh, so the limit is the tenant level, and if you have multiple environments, it will have a combined limit for all the environments. And if you have the Dynamics 365 Enterprise or Professional, like even one license, if you have 500,000 base requests and 5,000 requests per each user license. Uh, so, but for if you just only have Power Apps or Power Automate license in your tenant without any Dynamics 365, you will only have 25,000 base requests for non-user license. But if you have a really high demand flow that is running like every seconds, and then it can exceed this particular request limit, you can assign a per flow plan. So if you have a per flow plan assigning to the particular flow, it can have 250,000 requests within 24 hours, and that doesn't use the non-licensed user request limits. So you can use that when you have a mission critical flow that has a lot of processing power that is running a lot of steps within the flow. You can consider uh, the bar automate per flow license for that flow. And there are also other request limits like uh, so depending on the flow, the plans, so that's a performance profile. It's like low, medium, high, right? So normally all the environments that's like free developer license or a team member, we only have a very low performance profile, but most of our projects it will go into the medium profile where we have Power Apps or Power Automate plans or even the Dynamics 365 plans. So the Power Platform request limits, they also has other than the 24-hour limit, it has a 5 minutes uh, limit, which is 100,000, which is pretty much if unless you have a really big enterprise projects, it's hard to reach 100,000 requests within 5 minutes. And the flow are using the blend of its owner. So we always need to make sure to assign the cloud flows to the application user. So when we assign the Cloudflow owner, we can click on the edit. And this is the details page of the Cloudflow. You can click on the edit and assign the owner. And it is not, you cannot assign like the co-owner. So the co-owner doesn't mean this owner of the Cloudflow. You need the main owner of the Cloudflow. Right? If you want to have bulk assign the multiple Cloudflows owners to an application user, what you can do is in the advanced setting, you can go to the like classic advanced find. And in the classic advanced find, you find the flows with the processes with the categories modern flow. Then you will list the list of the cloud flows, and you can all assign it, multiple select and assign it to the records. So that way you can bulk assign the Cloudflow owner. So the service principal own flows, if it is manually trigger or Dataverse run as user flow, the license is for the running user. So let's say we have a flow that is trigger on a particular record. When the user select for a record and then run it, that license is based on the running user. But if it is in context of the apps, so for those apps running on the automated flow, right? Like when the account is updated, we just update run this particular flow. So those are the automated flows, and the schedule flows. We want to run a batch job every night. We retrieve the records, process today, and process it and update the status or something. And then those needs to be associate the flows to the app. So if the flows are outside of the app's context, not related to the Power Apps or Dynamics 365, you need to assign those flows with a per flow license. So if you're not sure what flows are breaching the licensing, you can always get the Microsoft has a documentation in the link below. Power Platform request users information for you can get the licensed user reports, non-licensed user report, and per flow reports. And if there's any flows that are exceeding like the all these requests mentioned in the pages below, pages before, what you can do is you can buy more capacity add-on. So we can add on in the 50,000 bulk uh, block, and then you can assign for high usage non-licensed user or high usage licensed user. So if you are not doing that, and if your flows keep exceeding the capacity, Microsoft will send an email to the flow owner, the administrator. What you can do is you can run a PowerShell script to run with that get admin flow at risk for suspension. That will show you the list of all the flows that are breaching and the license and also exceeding the request limits. So you can know that you can associate those flows to the application, or you can buy more capacity for those flows and all these things. Otherwise, your flow will get suspended once it exceeds the threshold. So in order to associate the flow to the app, go to the particular flow and associate, click on the edit and associate to the bar related bar apps or Dynamics 365 apps that is this particular flow is related to. And all these um, request limits of the Power Platform, there are also service protection API limits. So that is not related to the Power Platform. That is relevant to the all the service project API. That is within 5 minutes window, like that 6,000 requests. So per web server. So that is per web server. So means like your environment, especially in the production, there may be a multiple web server. So if your flow hits different web server, you might potentially get more than 6,000 requests within the 5 minutes, but you can't be sure. So if you have anything that you are running for uh, data migration or anything that is going to utilize a lot of requests, what you can do is you can raise a support ticket with Microsoft, and then you can request for a temporary limit increase for a specific window. Otherwise, your flows will get, or anything that is exceeding, you will get an error. One thing to optimize, maximize the thing is you can split the service principal. So this is per user per web server, right? So if you are using multiple application user, so let's say if you have 50 flows and you want to split like 25 of the flows using one service principal account with a different connection reference, and you use another 25 flows with a different service principal and different connection reference. In that way, you have a less chance of hitting the service protection API limit. So always think about the Cloudflow with a heavy loads to separate and have a different service principal. And another way to reduce the number of all these requests is
A quick question there.
have, huh?
Just a quick question for my end.
Yeah,
Yeah, so if we go back to the slides here, so when you talk about the multiple connection reference, recently I have experience regarding that as well, and and I'm using the service account one connection reference for multiple, flows connectors, and I was experiencing errors and probably delay and sort of, and my question is, what is the limit of connectors you can use service account? Maybe five or 10 or one or something, or there has to be dedicated service account or connection reference, so to say.
yeah. Uh, there is no such limit on how many connection reference or how many service principal accounts that we can use. The more we create, it's a bit more harder to manage in terms of like our ELM structure. We every time we deploy to another environment, we need to connect, set up the we deploy the solution, we set the connection for this connection reference. So the more we have, it's more complex. So we just need to have a bit of a balance. And one good thing is one important thing is to just do uh like find out the ones that with the heavy loads and just split it out those cloud flows uh, and have a different separate connection reference and a separate service principal account. Uh, I think in the beginning of the project, it's a bit hard to identify and design, and it is more of a like the thing that we monitor and improve over time during the project after project go live. And also sometimes you may also get a bit of an idea about how busy this particular flow can be. So let's say we have a system that process applications, and normally we have to ask the users before we do the performance load test and everything. Okay, like typically on average, they like how many like applications you receive, right? And so we have a bit of an idea of how these flows can be busy, and uh, especially the some of the things that I notice is those flows that get triggered during the batch job. So sometimes overnight they bring like 5,000, 6,000, 10,000 data from the integration from different other system and create the records. And then at that time, particular cloud flows get triggers for like 10,000 instances. And then we know this particular flow will be busy. And then we can identify that. And then we can uh, just just have a separate connection reference and the uh, service principal for that.
Yeah, great, great. Thanks for that. Somebody asked a question like, they say he would like you to talk about classic cloud flows and different between that and the other cloud flows. I don't know what it means, but I'm just trying to
Yeah,
ask a question.
yeah. I can
Uh,
explain that because I came from the CRM background. So classic workflows is the way of uh, automating things which are native to the Dynamics 365. And uh, the classic workflows are good, but um, the cloud flows are the future way. Like the classic workflows are a bit of a like click and design, and Microsoft is no longer investing on its technology anymore, tech functionality. Even though they are not deprecated, we still use it for. We only use it for real-time classic workflows, but all the asynchronous, we just build it on the cloud flows because one thing is more advanced technology, and we also process for go through the child records, and we can do a lot more with the cloud flows, where the cloud classic workflows are a bit limited functionalities. So yeah, for all the asynchronous process, I recommend to build in the uh, Power Automate cloud flows using Dataverse connector.
Good, good, good. So that's the question for now. Thanks for that.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. We're also approaching the last slide,
Hmm.
uh, like how we are going to reduce the steps in the cloud flows we have because we have all these limits and API requests. Everything is basically for each step. In this particular example, we have getting the current time, convert to New Zealand time zone at 7 days, get a specific substring, and compose. So we have 5 steps, right? And then that will means if one run of this Cloudflow that will consume 5 Power Platform requests. What we can do is if we have a bit of a developer who are, or even functional consultants who are a bit comfortable writing the expressions, we can write all of these into one single expression, like getting the current UTC now, convert it to the New Zealand time zone, and add day 7, and get a substring and put it in the compose. So that is one way to use whenever we have a native expression available for particular action, uh, use it to instead of using multiple actions. Oh, we have the same results. And so these are the key points that we discussed in the last section. Platform request limits, we have to, it's all count towards the Cloudflare owner. And if the Cloudflare is associated to the Dynamics 365 or Power Apps, make sure to associate the flow to the app so that it will not be asking for a license. Otherwise, you have to specify for a Cloudflare license. Other than the platform request limits, you have the service protection API limits, uh, and to avoid all these things, just minimize the number of steps. Yeah, I guess that's all for my session today.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Lynn, for your time. And this is um, very, very, very resourceful. And in terms of, building the cloud for efficiently, I mean, this is very, very useful. And I've learned a lot from here because I'm just imagining how I've been building my flows all this while, and I can see that the better way to do it now, efficiently. I
Yeah,
mean, it's kind of it's something that is, somebody should know when you're building the cloud flow. Just like the way you described almost the last slide there, in terms of just using one expression instead of having too many, and of course, this will reduce the numbers of, runtime on the flow, and also to reduce the issue regarding performance issues. It's a lot there. It's a lot to learn from there, right? So, yeah. So, but I'm just trying to check if there's any question from here. Okay, somebody asking question. Okay, let me show it. Can you see the question here? So what can be done to reduce user-based API throttling errors for a web app? Do you see the question?
yeah. What can be done to
Mm,
reduce user-based API throttling from the web app? Hmm. So I think, if I'm not wrong, it is about uh, the web app, or like the portal that
mm,
is connected to the Dataverse, and when is and it's and the API got throttled. Mm, I'm not too sure about this.
understand.
Yeah, this is more for
Mm,
the cloud flows, and yeah, I'm not too sure how we can reduce this API throttling errors from a web app.
mm,
Um,
okay.
yeah, if it is related to the Power Automate cloud flows, no, we can reduce the API throttling, uh, no, just by, as I mentioned in the last few slides,
Mm,
we can try to uh, use the service principal, so that it is using the service principal uh, request limits.
mm,
And if the flows are really exceeding that particular service principal request limits, we can buy a capacity add-on to, increase the request, so that we can avoid throttling.
mm. Okay, okay, good. All right, thanks for that. Just bring it up another question here. I don't know if this is a question or just advice.
Yeah.
Just-
Um. Well,
just- He said I'm currently doing bachelor's in computer science from
Mm,
Delhi University and done a separate course on data science. And I was wondering, should I do full stack? Full stack, man, but it's okay, development now and do
well,
DSA side by side.
to the side, yeah, I don't know. It's so all about what your passion is. Like some people, they have a passion about doing this data science, but
Yeah.
some people they
Mm,
they they have they like doing the software development. For me, yeah, a bit of a. I think it's good to explore and
mm.
see what you like, and if it is what you enjoy, you can do start side by side.
Yeah, just like I said, so show what you enjoy, what you have passion for,
Mm,
and then you can be able to. There's a lot of opportunity in the out there, right? So it just depend on and your passion for which part of technology you want to take that. So, but yeah, I'm sure that you low Power Platform Dynamics. Okay, so one again. What's this? Okay, I think she's just trying to respond to
how
the
to optimize requests,
mm,
batch API
yeah.
calls, cache
Mm,
responses, and minimize repeated call. Yeah, it's a good point.
mm. Okay, thanks for that. Okay, all right. Okay, so thanks for trying. Okay, the same person. All right, Neha. Okay, I think we do have more question here, and other than to say thank you so much for your time, Lee, and it was so you know it's great to learn from you and great to see how we can efficiently manage our cloud flows within the Power Automate. And yeah, so this is great one. Thank you so much for your time. I know you've been very busy, but I just have to I have no choice but to pick. I mean to drag you here. So yeah, thank you so much. I really
Okay.
appreciate the time and do enjoy the rest of the day. All
Yeah.
right, thanks everyone for your time.
Okay.
Next again, we'll see you next month for MVP Conan. So have a good day, everyone.
Okay. Thank you.